Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to explain why Grapes of Wrath is a garbage novel. If you have a copy of it, burn it right now and replace it with one of these sort of books. You see Ayn Rand right here? Yeah. Replace your copy of Grapes of Wrath with a copy of Atlas Shrugged. Or, even better, The Fountainhead. Heck yeah. But yeah, Grapes of Wrath was a garbage novel. I read it during high school before I read The Fountainhead. Actually, I think it was right before too, because it was my junior year when I read it, and it was one of the required readings in my class. Actually, I might have been reading it at the same time as I was reading The Fountainhead, which is interesting, but whatever, that's kind of a side note. Yeah, I read it back in high school, in 11th grade, and I actually don't remember too many details from the book because the plot was so boring, the plot was so terrible that it's not a very memorable book. That's what I noticed about a lot of books that aren't objectivist, that aren't written by Rand. A lot of them are just not very memorable, because it seems like it's just listing disconnected events, and that was definitely the case for Grapes of Wrath. They would occasionally one initial thing that you notice is that there's these occasional chapters thrown in where it's completely unrelated to the plot, and well, it like creates the symbol, which isn't a terrible thing, but you should be able to like symbolize it in the characters or do something related to the plot of the story rather than doing this complete aside to a turtle crossing the road to demonstrate something about your characters. This turtle has nothing to do with the actual plot. Why is it in there? It's a disconnected chapter. So he does this a lot, and this was something that my teacher would say, oh, this is some virtuous thing that this dude's doing when he's writing. No, make your plot connected. Every word, every event that happens in the novel should be connected to the main theme of the story. It makes your novel very memorable and very non-memorable and very disintegrated when you throw out these disconnected chapters in the middle of the novel. It's just irrelevant, and it doesn't progress the plot in any way, and it doesn't develop any of your characters. It doesn't develop anything about the novel. It might contribute to the theme a little bit, but you should do that through something that connects to the plot. Your plot and your theme should be integrated fully. They should not be disconnected with other strains of the novel that have nothing to do with the plot. The purpose of a book should be to progress a plot forward towards some ultimate end. Grapes of Wrath did not do this. Grapes of Wrath, basically, the whole structure of the novel is just jumping from one thing to the next thing and showing no real connection between them. It's tough to even call it a story because nothing happens. It doesn't lead to anything. The end of the novel is just that main character woman breastfeeding some homeless dude. Like, what the fuck? And yeah, I mean, that's such a weird ending, and it doesn't show anything. Nothing happens in the novel. There's no climax of the novel. Nothing happens in the whole novel, which is terrible. It's not a good book. And another thing, I actually remember my teacher would talk about this, and it's like where he was like go on and run on sentences. I just remember this just now. Yeah, he wouldn't even write in proper grammar sometimes in the novel. He'd use terrible run on sentences, and it's just like, oh, it's part of the craft. He's just breaking away from common English writing stereotypes of what English is supposed to be. No, follow the language. Follow the language if you're going to write a book. But whatever. That's a small point as well. So yeah, my biggest problem is the fact that he doesn't have a plot. There's no plot. Everything's disconnected. There's nothing really integrated together. Basically, well, the kind of plot of the story is these people are just traveling, basically. They're traveling to California. And along the way, stuff happens to them. But then there's also these other random chapters thrown in which have nothing to do with the actual story and other things like that. So, which is disconnected from the plot. You should, when you write a story, you have to connect things to the plot. That's the purpose of writing the story, rather than just showing whatever the hell you want to and showing non-essentials, basically. Your story should be focused on a theme, and it's the essentials of that theme, while disregarding the non-essentials. And that's one thing that John Steinbeck doesn't do very well in that novel. He's a naturalist writer, which I would say is a problem. You want to have a romanticist view of literature. You want to have a romanticist sort of art style. It's far superior to naturalism, because a romantic sort of view of the world, it shows ideals, it inspires you, rather than a depressing naturalist view, which doesn't actually show anything essential. It doesn't actually say anything. It's just like, yeah, here's a portrait of the world as it is. And yeah, but now let's get on to sort of the philosophical message rather than just the style, which I had a lot of problems with, as you see. The philosophical message of it, I mean, the way that, well, let's just start with how the characters are portrayed. The characters are portrayed like animals. They're people just killing each other, barely surviving, using force on one another to get what they want, and basically living like animals in these like terrible areas, and basically just and it's so anti-production, anti-power, anti-rich people too. That's a big theme in it as well. It's so anti-prosperous people, and it basically is like these are the real people. These are the real everyday people, which are like the lower class poor people who will do anything to get by and kill other people and kill rich people and all those sort of things. And I mean, that's just a terrible theme. It's such a uninspiring view of man. It's the characters are so uninspiring. They don't possess virtues. They're not fighting for anything really. Well, they're fighting to survive, basically. They're fighting for a base level of survival. That's what animals do. They're not fighting for higher values. They're not fighting to produce things. They're fighting for this bare minimal survival. And that's what John Steinbeck kind of views humanity as. He views them as these people not fighting to achieve their values, to achieve their highest values and happiness. It's just this base level survival, this animal-like survival, which is absolutely disgusting. It's such a disgusting view of man. And another thing which is extremely common throughout the book, this was probably my biggest problem with the book at the time. I was actually reading The Fountainhead in parallel to this, as I mentioned earlier, and this was something I noticed very clearly as a distinction between the two. John Steinbeck, he'd go into these rants at the end of chapters sometimes where he'd basically explain, we need to convert the I to the we and sacrifice your own individual interest to promote the family, to promote the group that you're traveling with. This is such a terrible thing as well. It very literally has this view of human beings as animals, that we need to collectivize our efforts to make sure that every individual can just base level survive, not achieve their potential, self-actualize, become happy qua man, or live qua man, just survive as animals, basically, and survive collectively, survive for the collective consciousness, for the collective happiness. I mean, this is what he would do. He'd talk about like the collective consciousness, converting the I to the we, and it's such a terrible thing that this is the thing that's being taught. This is the book that they're teaching about in schools. This is the book that my English teachers would have me read, and people are reading it right now at my high school, and it's just such a shame that that's the book being promoted. It's such an uninspiring view of man, such an uninspiring view of life. But that's what's being promoted right now. It's extremely damaging. Just the whole idea of like the collective unconscious. No, there's no collective mind. There's no collective consciousness. That's not how people live. That's not the experience we actually have. We experience our own individual happiness. We should experience our own individual values and fight to pursue those. And if anyone stands in your way, you get them out of your way. And if they're using force on you, you have to use force back, of course. But you basically ignore the we. Ignore the we in favor of the I. We can't live as animals anymore. We can't live as hunter-gatherers anymore. We have so much potential to achieve our values for ourselves, to be happy for ourselves, to experience happiness, to experience real happiness. And this book, it just destroys that. It says, no, we need to survive as a base level survival, like animals, and live as a collective. And that's basically what happens throughout the book. That's the conclusion. At the end, they become this great collective. They become this collective who's able to survive. And Rose of Sharon breastfeeds a homeless dude, just showing how we're all this interconnected species, and this I is finally converted into the we, so that everybody is equally valued among everybody, and all that bullshit. Now, tell me, would you rather live as Tom Joad in Grapes of Wrath, or would you rather live like Howard Roark? who never sacrifices his values for anybody, who converts this we that is across the rest of society into an I. Convert the we to the I. Actually, there's another book written around that time, around the same time as Grapes of Wrath was written. That's all about converting the we to the I. And that's actually read sometimes it's read in schools, not as often as Grapes of Wrath, of course, but it's still, that's what they should replace Grapes of Wrath with. This wonderful book right here, Anthem. This is a perfect book to give to high schoolers. It's short, very, very quick read, very easy theme to grasp. It's a very short, easy theme, and it's a good theme. It's a good book. And like the plot is actually integrated. The plot's actually connected to everything. The English is actually written well. The character is actually inspiring. He has a passion to create to create a light bulb, basically, and then they cast him out of society, and then he goes and lives with the woman he loves and lives with light. He creates light. He lives in the forest with her, and he achieves his values. He achieves something. Would you rather live as that man? Or would you rather live as Tom Joad, who doesn't have any individual desires anymore and is basically just sacrificed for the collective at that point, by the end of the novel? That's not how I want to live, and that certainly shouldn't be how you want to live either. Grapes of Wrath is such an uninspiring, collectivist, naturalistic book, and the fact that it's what's being read in high schools instead of Anthem is such a shame. It's so. Oh man, it's such a shame that it's Grapes of Wrath instead of Anthem. So go take your Grapes of Wrath book, go burn it. Go burn that book. Oh man, I sound like a Nazi right now, but that's okay. And burn it and replace it with this work of art. This beautiful work of art, Anthem. Yeah, so honestly, I feel like there might end up being people who watch this at my high school because they're reading Grapes of Wrath right now. So this will be interesting when they discover my channel, even though they already know about it, and most of them do. But it'll be interesting because there will be people who actually end up watching this video, and we'll see if it actually gets back to to some higher ups who are having them read that book at school. I don't think some of those teachers will be too much of a fan of my shredding of Grapes of Wrath. I ripped that shit to shreds. Yeah. Great. John Steinbeck got destroyed in this debate. Call me Destiny because I'm destroying people in debate. Hell yeah. But yeah, I think that is all that I have to say. I dismantled John Steinbeck in this critique. And honestly, John Steinbeck, his Mice of Men book, I thought that was a decent book. I don't remember it too well, but I remember, like, I liked the characters. I thought it was a decent novel, but Grapes of Wrath is terrible. It's such a terrible book. It's everything that's wrong with American intellectuals, especially at the time of the Great Depression. Yeah, his book is undoubtedly had a negative influence on people. And I remember actually at the time when we were reading it, our teacher was like, yeah, some people called this guy a socialist, and yeah, that's such a weird accusation to make of John Steinbeck. Like, oh, he's obviously not a socialist. It's like, maybe he wasn't explicitly a socialist, but what he did gave way to socialist ideas. He converting the I to the we. How is that clearly not socialist rhetoric? But whatever. I didn't have the ammunition to argue with it back then. I would just make jokes about how his English style was terrible and he didn't use proper English, and my teacher would get really mad at me. But yeah, I'm glad I had the Fountainhead at the same time to cancel out whatever negative influence that book may have had on me. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say for today. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Peace.